The auditorium at Ridge Valley High was buzzing, not with excitement, but with the kind of teenage restlessness that comes with being forced to sit through another school assembly. Foldable chairs scraped the polished gym floor as students shifted around, chatting under their breath, eyes glued to their phones. Teachers lingered near the doors, trying to maintain a hint of order, but even they exchanged sideways glances. Everyone was waiting to see who the final guest speaker would be, although most assumed it would be another suit with a LinkedIn smile and a boring speech about career paths. Then, the principal stepped to the mic and cleared her throat. "Our final guest today needs no introduction," she said, voice tight with anticipation. "Please welcome Mr. Dwayne Johnson." For a moment, there was silence, like the air had caught in the room's throat. Then came a ripple of disbelief, followed by gasps, then the unmistakable buzz of shock rolling through the crowd. Phones shot into the air. Students surged forward in their seats, some even standing up, necks craned toward the gym doors. And there he was, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Not in some tailored red carpet suit or with an entourage trailing behind. Just jeans, boots, and a plain black jacket. No fanfare, no lights, just him. As he walked slowly down the side aisle toward the stage, he nodded gently to a few teachers. Calm, grounded, real. In the middle of the crowd sat 16-year-old Lily Brennan. She practically sank into her hoodie, shrinking into the space between her friends. "Oh my God," Ava whispered beside her, wide-eyed. "Is that your godfather?" Lily didn't answer. She could barely breathe. "He didn't tell me he was coming." At the front of the gym, Dwayne took the mic. His voice deep and calm, cut through the buzz like a warm blade. "Hey, I know career day's probably not the highlight of your school year, so thanks for letting me crash it." Some chuckles rippled across the room. He ran a hand across his bald head, eyes glancing across the rows of stunned teenagers. "I was filming nearby. Heard this was happening. Thought maybe I could talk a little bit about paths that aren't so clear-cut." And just like that, the room began to shift. Even the kids scrolling on their phones started paying attention. He spoke simply, about rejection, about being broke, about the early years when even gyms didn't call him back, about how he never thought he'd be a global icon. He just wanted to do enough to get by, to support his family. Then his voice shifted. "I'm here today not because I planned it, but because someone I care about goes to this school. She's had a rough year, and I just wanted to show up." Lily's heart stopped, her cheeks flushed red-hot. The whispering around her turned to full-on stares. Some kids already knew. Others were figuring it out. Principal Lang stepped forward. "We've got time for a couple of questions." Hands shot up, but one rose faster, higher than the rest. Derek Walsh, class clown, prank king, master of sarcasm, stood before being called on. "Mr. Johnson," he said, voice practically dripping with smugness. "You're obviously a talented actor, but do you have any, real talents?" The room chuckled. Teachers shifted uncomfortably. Derek pushed it further. "I mean, we've got a school talent show next Friday. Maybe you should sign up." "Show us what else you've got." More laughter. A few claps mocking. Somewhere in the back, a student shouted, "Yeah, let's see if The Rock can sing." Principal Lang moved to intervene, but Dwayne lifted a hand gently, stopping her. He turned to Derek and smiled, calm and even. "Sure," he said, "I'll do it." The gym went silent, then chaos. Was he serious? "Next Friday, right?" he added. "I'm in." Lily's stomach dropped. The entire school turned to her, and just like that, everything changed. Long before the world knew his name, long before blockbuster movies and global fanfare, there was just a quiet boy with a heavy silence and no clear way to unload it. At 15, Dwayne Johnson was not The Rock. He wasn't even on a path to becoming someone people noticed. He drifted between schools, between homes, between identities. Too quiet for the cool kids, too big for invisibility, too emotional to be tough. His mother worked double shifts. His stepfather had walked out. And Dwayne spent most of his afternoons walking the edge of city parks and library rows, not really going anywhere, just trying not to feel like nowhere belonged to him. One rainy afternoon, everything shifted. He ducked into a narrow alley trying to escape the downpour. That's when he saw it, a faded wooden sign swinging over a barely cracked door. Voice Studio Y, Arata. It read in careful, almost forgotten lettering. There was no music drifting out, no sound at all, just a faint orange glow behind the curtain. He was about to keep walking when a voice from inside called out, calm and deliberate, "You might as well come in, you're already halfway here." Caught, Dwayne hesitated, then stepped through the door. The studio smelled like wood polish and old sheet music. A grand piano took up most of the room. Books stacked in organized chaos lined the walls. And there, seated beside the piano, was an older man in a grey sweater, tuning a stringed instrument without even looking up. "You're not here for lessons," the man said. Dwayne shrugged. "No, sir." "Then sit. Rain doesn't ask permission." That was the first day he met Yusuke Arata. Yusuke had once sung in grand concert halls, Tokyo, Vienna, New York. But few knew he had survived 2 wars, lost his voice to injury, and rebuilt it not for fame, but for students. Not just any students, only the ones he called silent sounding. He never posted ads, never asked for money. He chose by instinct. And that day, something about Dwayne made him say, "Come back tomorrow. Bring no excuses." Dwayne returned, and he kept returning. He never told anyone, not his mom, not his classmates. That studio became his world. But he didn't sing, not at first. Yusuke made him stand in front of a cracked mirror in silence. Minutes passed, breath in, breath out. Again, again. "A singer's voice," Yusuke said, "begins long before sound." They never worked on songs. They worked on intention, on posture, on stillness. "If you don't know what a note means," Yusuke would say, "then why would anyone listen to it?" Over weeks, then months, Dwayne's voice began to wake up. Not perfect, not polished, but raw and real. And one day Yusuke handed him something that didn't look like sheet music at all, just a single folded page, handwritten with precision. "I wrote this for you," he said. "It's called Only the Quiet Remain. Someday you'll know why." Dwayne sang it once, just once, in that room, just the 2 of them. No accompaniment, no recording, just voice. After the last note, Yusuke didn't speak. He just nodded once, then turned off the lights. A week later, Yusuke passed away. No funeral, no fanfare, just a note addressed to Dwayne. "Your voice is for those without one." Dwayne never sang the song again. He folded it carefully, placed it inside an old novel, and carried it with him from apartment to apartment, from hotel to hotel, from movie set to movie set. He never spoke about it, not in interviews, not to friends. It wasn't shame, it was reverence. That song wasn't for the world, not yet. It was the memory of a boy who had once been heard by someone who didn't need proof, and now, decades later, standing in the middle of a town gymnasium with whispers circling his goddaughter's name and a school mocking his silence, that buried, voice stirred again, not out of ego, out of purpose. Because maybe, just maybe, the quiet had waited long enough. By the time the final bell rang that Friday afternoon, the story had already sprinted ahead of reality. Keanu Reeves's surprise visit to a high school might have shocked the internet, but Dwayne Johnson accepting a dare to perform at a teen talent show, that was wildfire. In the halls of Ridge Valley High, it wasn't just gossip anymore, it was spectacle. And for 16-year-old Lily Brennan, it felt like a spotlight she hadn't asked for was now welded above her head. The whispers started before she even left the gym. Is that really her godfather? Wait, what's he gonna do? Bench press? The piano? Imagine if he actually sings. The words tangled like vines around her as she walked, growing tighter with every step. Ava, her closest friend, tried to deflect the questions, but even she couldn't mask her curiosity. Dude, what is happening? Is he serious? What's he going to do? Lily had no answers, because she hadn't even told Dwayne about the talent show. He hadn't mentioned showing up. And now, his name was literally on the sign-up sheet. Slot 14. Dwayne Johnson. It was real, and it was a problem. At lunch, Lily didn't sit with her usual group. She slipped through the back hallways to the art wing, a quiet corner of the school, where she could breathe. The tiled floor was cold under her sneakers as she paced beside glass display cases filled with student sculptures and dusty trophies. Her mind raced. Why would he say yes? Dwayne wasn't reckless. He was deliberate, careful, thoughtful, the kind of man who spoke softly and watched everything before speaking, agreeing to perform at a school talent show in front of a live-streaming student body, local press, and a crowd full of teenagers. Looking for a joke? That didn't sound like him. That sounded like sabotage. Her phone buzzed and buzzed again. Messages piling up faster than she could read them. Ava's was first. Is he gonna sing or something? Then Alan. Does he even have a talent besides acting? Then Derek, of course. Tell your uncle to bring cue cards. He's gonna need 'em. Lily shoved the phone into her hoodie pocket. Her stomach flipped. Her hands felt clammy. The rest of the day was a blur. Teachers talking, classmates whispering, but none of it mattered. In her mind, one sentence played on a loop, mocking her, louder than anyone else. Do anything real. That evening, the drive home felt like a slow-motion collision. Lily sat in the front passenger seat of her mom's SUV, staring out the window. Dwayne was in the back, quiet, watching the trees roll past like nothing had happened. She turned toward him. When did you decide to say yes? He paused, voice calm. Because someone challenged me. But it was a joke, Lily said. He was trying to humiliate you. Dwayne nodded. I could tell. Then why? His answer was soft, deliberate. Because if I'd said no, they would have laughed anyway, just in a different way. Her mom caught their exchange in the rearview mirror, but didn't interrupt. Lily looked down at her hands, voice quieter. But what are you even going to do? What's your talent? Dwayne met her gaze and smiled. Haven't decided yet. That was not the answer she needed. By the time they pulled into the driveway, Lily was unraveling. She stomped inside, slammed the door to her room and collapsed on the bed. She didn't cry. She just stared at the ceiling, numb. The pressure wasn't just about him. It was about her. Because if he failed, it wouldn't just be his reputation mocked across phones and message boards. It would be hers. Downstairs, Dwayne sat on the guest bed, his overnight bag still half-zipped. He stared out the window, listening to the wind rustle the trees. No panic, no worry, just a stillness, like a man waiting for the world to catch up to something he already knew. That night, the house went still early. Vanessa retreated to her room with a book and a glass of wine, worn out from the long day. Lily stayed upstairs, headphones on, textbooks open but ignored. Her thoughts refused to settle. Her godfather, the most composed man she knew, had casually agreed to perform in front of an entire school and maybe the whole internet. Meanwhile, Dwayne Johnson moved through the living room below with a quiet sense of purpose. It was the way he moved that struck you. Not rushed, not frantic, deliberate, like someone walking through a familiar memory. He approached the bookshelf in the corner, one that had always been there but rarely touched. It was mostly filled with old family, photo albums, forgotten paperbacks, and a few of Vanessa's sentimental treasures. But nestled between a poetry collection and a worn-out piano theory guide was a slim, barely visible drawer. He opened it. Inside sat a single envelope, yellowed with age, no return address. One word written across the seal in faded cursive. Listen. His fingers hovered over it. He didn't open it right away. This wasn't a plan. This wasn't nostalgia. This was something else. A tug from a corner of the past he'd spent years guarding. He carried the envelope to the dining table, set it down gently, and pulled the flap open. Inside was a folded page, thin, delicate, and feathered at the edges. Not a letter, a musical score, hand-written with care, staff lines inked in steady rhythm, notes drawn with quiet precision. In the top right corner, a title in soft, understated lettering, "Only the Quiet Remain." Dwayne exhaled, long and steady. He hadn't seen this page in more than 2 decades, not since Yusuke, not since the days when his grief had no language, and music had been the only voice left. He studied the bars, not touching them, just remembering. Minor chords, suspended rests, a slow, spare opening meant to feel like a memory unfolding. Yasuo hadn't written it for performance. He'd written it for Dwayne, and not as a gift, just a truth he said belonged to him. "One day," Yasuo told him, "you'll understand when silence needs a voice." And maybe tonight, the silence had grown loud enough. Dwayne stood, walked over to the upright piano near the window. It was a modest Yamaha. Vanessa had rescued it from a church auction years ago. It hadn't been tuned in ages. That didn't matter. He lifted the lid. His fingers hovered over the keys. He didn't play, not yet. Just sat there, looking at the score, taking in every detail he had once memorized, pencil markings in the margins, breath marks Yasuo had written to show him where to pause, not for drama, but for honesty. A small smudge in the corner, likely from Dwayne's teenage hands. Upstairs, Lily took off her headphones. Something shifted, a sound, a feeling. She couldn't explain it. She stepped into the hallway barefoot, careful not to make noise. At the top of the stairs, she stopped. From the landing, she could see him. Dwayne sat at the piano, perfectly still. The score opened before him. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched. And then, as if the house had taken a breath and was holding it, he began to play. Not loud, not polished, just soft, deliberate notes like footsteps in snow. His fingers touched the keys. With reverence, the melody moved gently, unhurried, shaped by something more emotional than technical. Lily's hand tightened on the railing. She had never heard him play, didn't even know he could. The music wasn't modern. It wasn't flashy. It was pure, grief and grace twined into something fragile, something real. He played the first page, then stopped. Silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything the song had awakened. Dwayne closed the score, rested his hands on the lid. Behind him, Lily took one quiet step down, then another. She didn't need to ask anything. She finally understood. This wasn't a joke. It was a secret, finally ready to be heard. The next morning started without fanfare. No headlines, no texts, just soft daylight slipping through the windows, and the quiet murmur of a town waking up. But for Lily, something was different. She hadn't slept much, not because of stress, but because of what she'd heard the night before. Her godfather, Dwayne Johnson, sitting at the old piano playing a song she never knew existed, a song that didn't ask for attention but demanded to be felt. Meanwhile, downstairs, Dwayne had already made the call. He asked to speak with Principal Lang. His voice was calm, steady. He explained that he wanted to rehearse, quietly, privately, on the school stage. There was a pause on the other end. Not hesitation, surprise, but eventually the answer was yes. By afternoon, word had started to spread, not through the press, not through a social post, just whispers. Dwayne Johnson was rehearsing, not acting, not filming, rehearsing for the school talent show. When he arrived at the Ridge Valley Auditorium, it was nearly empty. A janitor swept the hallway. A few students wrapped up after school clubs. And on stage, seated by the piano, flipping through a folder of vocal warm-ups, was Sophia Cho. She stood up as he walked in, brushing hair from her face. "You're actually doing this," she said. "I am." Sophia had graduated from Juilliard 2 years earlier, young, sharp, unshakable. She returned home after her father passed away and began teaching part-time. Students admired her, teachers respected her, but she didn't chase attention. So when she heard a rumor that Dwayne Johnson needed vocal coaching in her auditorium, she rolled her eyes. "Until now." "You're singing?" she asked, cautious. "I'm trying to. Do you have any experience?" He nodded, then shrugged. "Some." "How much is some?" Dwayne gave a small smile. "It's been a while." Sophia studied him, then gestured toward the piano. "Let's find out." The next 20 minutes weren't graceful. She walked him through warm-ups. His pitch? Solid. Sometimes his vowels, sloppy, breath support, inconsistent. But behind the technical flaws, there was something else. A voice that didn't sound like it was trying to impress. It sounded like it had something to say. When he finished the last scale, Sophia leaned against the piano. "You're not classically trained," she said, "but there's something in your tone, something lived in." "Is that good?" She paused. "It's not bad, it's just rare. You don't sound like someone trying to sing, you sound like someone remembering." He didn't respond, just nodded. And so they began. Every evening that week they met under the quiet hum of stage lights. Sophia brought marked-up scores. Dwayne brought his quiet focus. He never complained, never rushed, just listened, absorbed, tried again and again. On their second night, Sophia asked him to sing the melody from his old handwritten piece, "Only the Quiet Remain." He unfolded it like a relic, placed it on the stand. She didn't speak, just watched. When he began, it wasn't perfect. His voice cracked in the second phrase. He faltered near the bridge. But Sophia didn't interrupt. She didn't fix it. She let the silence hold. When the last note faded, she whispered, "Where did this come from?" Dwayne stared at the paper. "Someone I used to know, a long time ago." Sophia nodded slowly. He knew what he was doing. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. Instead, she adjusted the key to better suit his range, smoothed transitions, simplified the top notes. But she never tried to make him sound polished. She made him sound like himself. By Thursday, his voice was fuller. Still, cracked in places, still rough around the edges, but real. And as he sang, Sophia realized something. Most singers spend years trying to fake that kind of honesty. Dwayne wasn't faking anything. He was remembering, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't doing it alone. It was a quiet Saturday night at Ridge Valley High. The halls were dim, the building nearly empty except for the low hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional shuffle of footsteps echoing off the linoleum floors. In the auditorium, Dwayne and Sophia were finishing a late rehearsal. They had spent the last hour working through transitions, refining the timing between verses, smoothing the breath control needed for the final crescendo. Dwayne had just managed a particularly difficult swell, and for the first time, Sophia smiled without restraint. They didn't know anyone was watching. Outside the side door, Louise, the night custodian, stood with a mop in hand, leaning just slightly toward the glass. He wasn't snooping. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He had just been making his usual rounds when he heard a voice coming from the stage. Low, steady, unlike anything he expected from a school talent show. He peeked in and froze. There, under a single spotlight, stood Dwayne Johnson, not rehearsing. Lines, not cracking jokes. Singing. Louise blinked, unsure if it was real. For a moment, he thought maybe it was part of a movie shoot, a setup for some kind of stunt, but then he heard the voice, not polished, not theatrical, just raw, and oddly beautiful. He pulled out his phone, almost out of habit, and recorded a short clip. Just 30 seconds. The end of a verse. A few lines. The way Dwayne closed his eyes, the way the final note lingered, then Louise slipped away. He didn't plan to share it. Not at first. But later that night, sitting alone in the janitor's break room with a lukewarm cup of coffee and a flickering TV in the background, he watched it again and again. Eventually, he uploaded the clip to his private account. No hashtags, no tags, just a simple caption. Pretty sure I just saw Dwayne Johnson singing at my school, and he wasn't bad. Within minutes, it spread. One student reposted it to a school group chat. Another texted it to her cousin in LA. A few tagged their favorite pop culture pages. And before anyone could stop it, it was everywhere. By the next morning, the video had crossed 2 million views. People were stunned. Was it real? Was it AI? Was it a deep fake? Why was The Rock singing that kind of song in a school auditorium? Under moody lighting, comments flooded in. This can't be real. Wait, he can sing. I thought this was a parody. Why am I crying? Some mocked. Midlife crisis tour incoming. Others praised. Did not expect to feel anything at 2 a.m. And now I'm sobbing. It spread across every platform, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. One late-night show stitched the clip with old wrestling footage and jokingly called it The Ballad of the Brahma Bull. Another talk show slowed it down, overlaid it with dramatic lighting, and dubbed it Dwayne Unplugged. Still, the original clip had no context. Just Dwayne on stage, alone, singing a song no one could name, with a look on his face that said, this wasn't about performance, it was about memory. Sophia found out Monday morning. She was in the teacher's lounge, pouring herself coffee, when Mr. Allen, the biology teacher, waved his phone in her face. Hey, he said, your new star. Students trending. She glanced at the screen. There it was, looped, reposted, memed. Her jaw clenched. She set her cup down and walked out without a word. Outside, in the parking lot, she found Dwayne zipping up his jacket beside his motorcycle. She held up her phone. You saw it? He nodded once. She exhaled. It wasn't me. I know. He paused. Louise. Probably. Sophia looked at him, frustrated. We were building something real. Now it's trending under Sad Rock Sings. Offered a faint smile. I didn't look at the hashtags. You should have had a say in when the world heard this. Dwayne looked toward the mountains in the distance, quiet for a beat. Maybe the world heard it when it needed to. Sophia narrowed her eyes. That's very poetic, he gave a small shrug. Or maybe it doesn't change anything. She stared at him. People are going to laugh. They already were, he said, and in that moment she saw it. He wasn't shaken. He wasn't embarrassed, because for Dwayne this was never about being viral. It was about being real. By Monday, the video wasn't just viral. It was a sensation. Students who'd barely glanced at the talent show flyer were now huddled in hallways, whispering, scrolling, gasping. Dwayne Johnson singing at a school event had become the story no one expected, but everyone was watching. The leaked clip had been reposted by influencers, featured on morning talk shows, and dissected in YouTube reaction videos. But for Lily, none of that felt exciting. It felt like being caught in a storm she hadn't seen coming. She saw it the moment she stepped through the school doors. Faces turned, voices hushed, then surged in murmurs. Her godfather wasn't just the quiet figure who walked her to class anymore. He was the trending headline. And she was part of it, whether she liked it or not. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Ava had messaged, "You didn't tell me he could sing like that. What is happening?" Another classmate wrote, "I thought this was a joke, but I cried at the last note." Even Alan M., who barely spoke to her, texted, "Yo, that was legit." But Derek posted a video from the locker room, sitting at a piano app, fake crying while butchering a version of "Only the Quiet Remain." He whispered dramatically, "Because everyone else left the auditorium." then bowed and added sarcastic applause. It racked up thousands of likes within hours. People were laughing again, but not at the song, at him, and it wasn't just students. Podcasts joked that Dwayne had finally lost it. Memes plastered his face on boy band album covers with captions like, "From Smackdown to Breakdown." One late-night host called it the most heartfelt midlife crisis we've ever seen. Lily couldn't take it. She stopped opening messages, turned off notifications, walked the halls with her hoodie up and headphones in, even when she wasn't playing music. The volume wasn't the problem. The noise came from everywhere. At home, things weren't much better. Dinner was quiet. Dwayne didn't say much. He wasn't sulking. He wasn't hiding. He just seemed focused. After the plates were cleared, he disappeared to the guest room again, carrying the folder under his arm like it was glass. Lily watched him go and felt torn. She wanted to scream at the world for turning something sacred into a sideshow. But more than that, she wanted to know what he was thinking, why he wasn't fighting back, why he wasn't angry. Later that night, she crept downstairs. The light in the guest room was still on. She stood outside the door for a moment, listening. No music, just the faint sound of pencil on paper, a soft hum under breath. He wasn't reacting, he was preparing, and somehow that made it worse. The next morning at school, things reached a boiling point. Someone taped a sheet of paper over her locker, bold font, all caps. "Reserved for the talent manager of Dwayne Johnson." She ripped it down in silence. No one said anything to her face, but she felt every look, every glance. They weren't mocking her, not exactly, but they weren't kind either. In art class, Ava leaned over. "Is he still doing it?" she asked, voice low. Lily just nodded. Ava blinked. "He's kind of insane." Lily didn't answer, but her stomach twisted because she didn't know what scared her more, Dwayne quitting or Dwayne going through with it. That night, she came home late, walked through the door without saying much. Dwayne was already at the kitchen table, humming softly as he penciled in notations across the sheet music. The look on his face wasn't tense. It was calm, focused. "You saw the new video?" she asked quietly. He looked up, nodded once. "You want to respond?" She pressed. "No. He's mocking you. He's mocking everything." Dwayne folded the page, met her eyes. "If I respond, I give it weight. If I stay focused, I give the song weight." Lily sank into the chair across from him. "People are doubting you. They're laughing." "They were already laughing," he said softly. "I just gave them something different to laugh at." She stared at him. He leaned forward. "Most people are afraid of sincerity. It scares them because it asks them to feel." The room was silent. Lily looked at the score, now worn at the edges, smudged with quiet revisions and memories. She didn't need to say it out loud. He was doing it, and whether the world listened or not, the song was coming. Friday night, Ridge Valley Civic Center. The lights were soft, golden, casting long shadows across rows of freshly polished seats. The buzz in the auditorium was electric, not loud, not wild, just tense. A quiet kind of anticipation, the kind you feel in your bones more than your ears. The original venue couldn't hold the crowd. There had been too many calls, too many emails, too many people who had seen the video and wanted to see more. And so the stage was bigger now. The stakes, too. But backstage, Dwayne Johnson wasn't pacing. He wasn't breathing heavily or stretching his shoulders like he used to before a match. He just sat, calm, still, focused. In his hands, the worn folder, creased, softened by time, carrying every breath, every note of "Only the Quiet Remain." The song no one had heard, the one he'd kept buried for years. Sophia stood beside him, headset in one hand, clipboard in the other. She'd watched dozens of performers take the stage before, some nervous, some cocky, but none like this. She glanced toward the curtain. "They moved Derek to open," she whispered. "Card. Tricks. A lot of smoke. You're up right after." Dwayne didn't react. On stage, Derek cracked jokes, made a rubber chicken vanish, bowed deeply to scattered applause. Then he jogged off stage, smirking. As he passed Dwayne, he tossed a half-whispered jab. "Top that." Dwayne didn't blink, didn't even look. "Up." Sophia touched his shoulder. "You okay?" He stood, smoothed the front of his dark suit. "I'm ready." And then the house lights dimmed again. The MC's voice echoed, "Next up, please welcome Dwayne Johnson." The auditorium hushed. 1,000 eyes turned, 1,000 phones raised. No music played, no video montage rolled, just silence. And then Dwayne walked out. No swagger, no grin, no mic tricks, just a man, one hand holding the folder, the other swinging gently at his side. He moved slowly, deliberately, to the upright piano at center stage. He placed the folder down, sat, adjusted the bench, opened the sheet music. Then he waited. The silence grew thick, heavy, and then he played. The first note was soft, a single low key, then another, a gentle melody that didn't demand attention. It invited it. And then he sang. His voice wasn't perfect. It cracked, slightly in the upper range, carried a husky tremor in the lower, but it was honest, every word a memory, every breath a confession. The phones lowered, the audience leaned forward. This wasn't performance. This was presence. By the second verse, Dwayne's hands moved with confidence across the keys. His voice, still rough, found its rhythm. Not as a trained vocalist, but as a man telling the truth. The final verse came quieter than the first. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. The last note hung in the air, trembling, raw, beautiful. And then, nothing. He didn't bow, didn't speak. He just closed the folder, stood, gave the audience a small nod, and walked off stage. The silence stretched. Then, from the back row, someone clapped, once, twice. Others joined in. Not wild, not frenzied, just steady, honest. A standing ovation rose, not for a star, not for a show, but for a moment, for courage, for truth. Backstage, Sophia waited. Dwayne stepped off stage, eyes calm, hands loose. "You did it," she whispered. He looked toward the curtain. They heard it. Lily ran up, eyes shining. "That wasn't embarrassing," she whispered. "That was beautiful." Dwayne smiled softly. It was never about me. And in her heart, she understood. The song hadn't been for the audience. It had been for the ones who never got to sing, and tonight they finally did. Sometimes it takes just one moment, one voice, one note, one crack in the silence, for the world to remember what it means to feel. If this story moved you, even for a second, don't keep it to yourself. Share, comment. Let someone else know they're not alone. What part of you have you kept quiet? What truth are you still carrying? Tell us in the comments, not for applause, but so someone else knows they're not the only one. And if you believe in stories that speak when the world goes silent, hit subscribe. Because next time, it might be your voice the world needs to hear. Your silence matters. Your story matters. Only the quiet remain.